Paddy, where was your phone?
Well, my phone was in the BBC in another studio, and I just left it like I should hang it around my neck like Hyacinth Bouquet with her spectacles.
Oh, like Larry Grayson, I was thinking. You could be the new
Hopefully,
Larry Grayson.
shut that door.
So,
Um,
newscasters, if you were not with us last week, Paddy lost his phone and we were trying to find him, and then it took us a long time to find him, but he had lost his phone. Anyway, your phone was found, but you've gone missing today.
so I'm in a pub in Sheffield, so that you don't have to be. We're speaking to the community gardener here. It's called the Gardener's Rest, about what they're going to do with the Yorkshire water hosepipe ban.
Well, that sounds like a very good place to be. I'm not in Sheffield, but I am here in Broadcasting House for this Saturday's episode of Newscasts. It's Laura in the studio.
It's Paddy at the Gardener's Rest pub in Sheffield.
And I'm not on my own sim today, even though you've abandoned me. George Eaton, the senior editor of the New Statesman magazine, is with me this afternoon. Hello. So, George, part of the reason you are here, and it's nice to have you with us anyway, is because there is this row, quite an unusual row, happening between big figures on the left. Sharon Graham, the boss of Unite, one of the biggest unions, always disputed as to who exactly the biggest one is, and Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, who, of course, is one of the biggest figures in Labour politics. What's it all about?
Yes, so Unite at a conference voted to suspend Angela Rayner's membership and also to re-examine their relationship with Labour as a big donor and affiliate. It turns out, though, that Angela Rayner cancelled her membership some months ago. And this prompted a rather sort of increasingly sort of surreal exchange about exactly when what counts as cancelled. And Unite was saying it still appears as active. Rayner's team might say, well, she cancelled her direct debit, and it's not our fault if Unite's records aren't up to date. So all quite nasty.
And what's it actually about behind this role? Why is she being booted out? Why are they so unhappy?
Yeah, so this all relates to the long-running bin strike in Birmingham. Obviously, been going on for months, causing huge disruption. Unite's involved in that, and they accuse Angela Rayner of not working with them to resolve it. And there's a real sense of betrayal, really, in how Sharon Graham speaks about it, because they see Angela Rayner as one of their own, really. Mm-hmm. I think she obviously rose up Labour politics through the trade union movement, was a shop steward at Unison, and had been a Unite member for a long time. There is bad blood here.
Pads, it's quite a stink.
Yeah, well said. Can we reflect on the language used? Because I think we can understand the symbolism of unions, which are always traditionally affiliated with Labour in Britain. The clue's in the title, isn't it? But they said that Angela Rayner's position was disgraceful. Angela Rayner accused Unite of silly stunts. George, although there has been bad blood between Sharon Graham and Angela Rayner, were you surprised at the shots fired?
Yes, I think, look, Sharon Graham really feels the unions are at a crossroads here, I think. You've got the first Labour government for over a decade, and they're clearly feeling like they're not getting a good enough deal. Angela Rayner's allies will say, look, the workers' rights bill is going through. That's transformative. But I think all of this, and this relates to the pay dispute in Birmingham, also the junior doctors. The reality is there's just not that much money to go around, and so Labour is having to make these choices, and that's why you've got these sort of fraught industrial relations. But I also think it's Sharon Graham saying to her own side, who she's under pressure with, and she's going to face re-election sometime in the relatively near future. I am prepared to take this Labour government on. We're not rolling over. I think that's the sort of politics of it for her.
Shall we have a listen to what Sharon Graham said this morning to the BBC?
If it was me and I had a major backer like Unite that has everyday people in it, remember this was a vote of members at the Parliament of our union that was saying that we don't believe that Labour defends workers in the way that we thought they would. We believe that they're making the wrong decisions. I would be concerned about that.
It's really about what kind of Labour voters think they've got, which is kind of the read across from what kind of Labour government the Labour MPs think they've got. I mean, it seems that there's a fight on for the resources of the state and the soul of the Labour Party.
Yeah, I think, look, Jack Jones, who was the head of the Transport and General Workers Union, so the predecessor to Unite, was once asked about the relationship between Labour and the unions. And he said, murder, yes, divorce, never. But Unite are now talking about divorce. And I think that this comes in the context where there's talk about a new left party. And one of the things that's always held back left challenges to Labour is they don't have the unions on side. And unions are key for money and organisation. And Unite, if they stop being affiliated to Labour, they're not going to give up on politics. They will find other causes, parties to support. So I think that's the wider context as well.
And the money here is no small change. I mean, politics in Britain compared to the US is like small change, but it's still big cash to any one of us. Unite gives Labour about £1 million a year. Were the party to lose that income, that would absolutely matter. But there is also something intriguing for me about this, which I know makes me a nerd and I'm proud to be one. But Sharon Graham took over from Len McCluskey with a real aim, as I understand it, not to be as political as Len McCluskey was. Now, newscasters will all remember Len McCluskey was to some people the sort of pantomime villain of the Corbyn era. To other people, he was a real kind of hero because he backed Jeremy Corbyn and that huge sort of explosion on the left of the Labour Party of people who felt they were being listened to and they were in charge of that movement when they'd been excluded by people like Keir Starmer and Tony Blair for such a long time. But Sharon Graham has, over the months, become a more capital P political figure. George, what do you think's going on there?
I think the stakes are rising, basically. Look, we've got Labour in government. They're unpopular. You're seeing people on the left. Sharon Graham is very much of the left, asking what is this Labour government for? And they see Angela Rayner as someone who should be championing their cause more aggressively, as Deputy Prime Minister and as really the most prominent sort of former trade unionist in government. I also think it's that, and Keir Starmer actually made this warning when he addressed the TUC conference last year. He said, look, I have to tell you in candour, there are tough decisions and that will have repercussions for pay. Everyone remembers when Labour came in, they made some generous settlements.
Yeah, train drivers, junior doctors, people did pretty well out of it.
Yeah, and Keir Starmer made a warning then basically saying, look, future settlements are not going to be able to match those. And I think it's that, combined with the fraught politics that the Labour's facing in government.
Birmingham needs to sort out its bin strike. And if this had been in the city like London, you can be sure we'd have heard a lot more about Birmingham's bin strike, which Birmingham needs to sort out. Can I just say that again?
You certainly can.
And the thing is that the row is a Labour-run city council and the deputy prime minister of a Labour government disputing with the union over what should sort it out. So it does look, again, like a leadership issue for Keir Starmer, because you would normally hope that family washing could be kept in the laundrette and not put out on the newscast. And the second thing is, I spoke to Baroness Margaret Prosser, who rose from the boss of the Trades Union Congress to the House of Lords. She says it's important for Labour that this spat is put out and extinguished as well. She's sort of siding with the government, but she wants both issues sorted out, the bins and the brouhaha.
And in terms of the technicalities of that route, I mean, this has been going on since March. So newscasters, if you've been affected, if you live in Birmingham, let us know what it's been like for you. The union claims that there's about 170 workers who might be affected, losing as much as £8,000 a year because of the decision to make changes in the way the jobs work at the council. The council, however, and the government are saying, look, actually, they're being offered a good deal and they just need to get on to it and move on. So that standoff, George, is the kind of thing you might think, well, hang on a minute, the Labour Party surely should be able to sort this out. Why does Angela Rayner seem so reluctant to get involved? Because one of the very interesting things that Sharon Graham said this morning, she said when it was the Tories who were meant to be sorting this out, I had the minister on speed dial. And actually, Angela Rayner doesn't want to be in the room.
That is a good question, because this is a bit of a gift to Labour's opponents, really. That Keir Starmer made so much of stability as change, and these industrial standards, they're very reminiscent of those you had in the Sunak era. Same with the junior doctors. So that's a very good question. I don't think Labour ever counted for that.
It's interesting, isn't it? And because they're also in a standoff with the junior doctors, or resident doctors as we now must call them. And Wes Streeting had some very punchy words for them this week, basically saying, jog on, you've had loads of money, the public is not going to back you. And it was interesting, you had Lord Winston, the very prominent medic, quitting the BMA over the fact that at this moment in time, they are behaving in the way that they are. Do you think, George, this might be actually just the beginning of a much more serious few periods of dispute between Labour and the unions that actually has, concrete effects on all of our lives?
I think it could be. I think partly because, look, I mean, we're in a context in which the economy has shrunk for 2 months running. There's less money around, but also people have seen now this is a government that is prepared to U-turn.
Yep.
U-turn on winter fuel, U-turn on welfare cuts. So that gives unions an incentive to strike, I think, and to put them under pressure. And they know they've got less political room for manoeuvre now.
And then there was a report saying that we can't keep paying Britain like the Britain of the past. There's been a big report out in the week, which our colleague Faisal Islam has written a lot about how with an aging population, we're going to have fewer taxpayers to fund the life as it is. So there's an awful lot of heat on Labour MPs who've drawn a line in the sand about what they expect from state spending, which means, as Laura reminded us last weekend, this budget that's coming up in the autumn is really the defining moment for the modern Labour Party, it seems, because obviously it's about the finances, but the headroom, she's got to raise, it said, £20 billion to keep steady. And I wonder what, George, because Laura was talking to me about this week, I wonder if you think this budget basically is Labour. I mean, are all budgets the government defined? Because obviously the Tories ditched Liz Truss and started with the new Prime Minister. So what is the stakes of the upcoming balancing of the books?
Oh, huge. I mean, Rachel Reeves's fate rests on it. I think the bond markets have kept her in place. Keir Starmer has backed her, but they need to deliver this budget. I don't think she can afford sort of more big U-turns. And tax is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. And we have a pretty good idea already of the kind of things that they'll have to do. It looks likely they'll freeze tax thresholds again.
That old trick.
I'm sure that they will be changes to pensions relief, because they've ruled out some tax increases in income tax, VAT, NI for workers. And so you're going to have to then go to wealth and stealth taxes. And I mean, it's also really a test, I think, of whether she can project some sort of economic optimism. Otherwise, you're just stuck in this zero sum world of where,
What's interesting is I wonder about this, whether or not we will hear, though, in the coming months, more of a sense from Rachel Reeves of the kind of thing that we've heard more commonly on the right, actually. Britain has not been living within its means, which is the kind of thing you hear all the time from Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor. It's the kind of thing you would read very often in some columnists, in some papers or some magazines on the right or online commentators. But when you talk to people in and around sort of Team Reeves, they do say, actually, look, the debt is absolutely enormous. We need to make this point. And I just wonder, that's of course why they've got their rules on borrowing and spending, and they want the debt to come down according to those rules. But I wonder if we might, in the coming months, in the run-up to that budget, see quite a careful stepping towards a message to the public says, actually, you know what, everyone, we can't carry on like this. We have to be balancing things in order that the debt comes down. Of course, you've got a Labour backbench grouping that's actually much more confident that they can get more cash out of the government ATM when they kick up a stink about something. But I just wonder if we might see the Treasury start to roll the pitch, to use that terrible jargon, in the run-up to that budget with a wider message to the wider public that they can't go on like this.
Definitely. I mean, Rachel Reeves' aides have this term they like to use of re-educate. So before the spring statement, before
that always goes so well when politicians try to do that.
and the spending review, they say, look, we need to re-educate people. What they mean by that is that there's this misperception that you could just loosen the fiscal rules, and that's very easy. Germany did it, and they point out that Germany's debt's around 65% of GDP. The UK's is more like 100% of GDP. So it's just a sort of false comparison.
So what do you think Angela Rayner is really up to? How strong is her position in government?
So I think her position in government has strengthened over the last year. When she first became deputy PM, there was this narrative that she'd been marginalised. She didn't have an office of the deputy prime minister.
She didn't have a free house for the weekend.
Yeah. This narrative started that Pat McFadden was the real deputy prime minister, and it was this sense that Angela will go off and do her own thing, but it's the government's dominated by Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, and then sort of Pat McFadden there. Now Angela Rayner looks a lot stronger. Cabinet minister, she was instrumental to the settlement that was reached with the rebels over welfare cuts. She is going to get that office of the deputy prime minister now, with around 30 staff housed in the cabinet office. So that gives her a sort of new permanent power base. She's second most popular cabinet minister amongst members after Ed Miliband. So put all of this together and you can see why people ask the question, could Angela Rayner replace Keir Starmer in this parliament? What's really interesting is some of the people who know her best and very close friends and MPs close to her say she genuinely doesn't want the leadership. But
that's what she said on the telly a few weeks back when we asked her playing out, and she sort of said, no, I just don't want it. I really don't want to do it. I honestly really don't want to do it. But there are plenty of politicians down the ages, because we're all getting on a bit, Paddy, who have said that to people like me and then actually turned out to do something completely different.
Exactly. And so they insist that wasn't just the politician's answer. And she's seen, obviously the toll that the job takes up close now. But as you said, the question is, if the ball comes free from the scrum, how would she respond? And you're completely right. In Labour, there might not be a vacancy, but there's always a contest. And who is seen as Angela Rayner's main rival? It's Wes Streeting. And then there are others. Andy Burnham has made a pretty open leadership pitch. Some say that's a sort of permanent campaign. But this is not what Keir Starmer would want just a year into his premiership.
Paddy?
I was reading in the FT today that the German coalition is having trouble getting some of its things through. The French lost their prime minister. He was there even less than a lettuce. I can't remember now if it was a lettuce or not, but Macron lost his prime minister. So there is this sense that the domestic economies in Europe are all facing a big tax and spend problem. Britain has a tax and spend problem. And the big difference between Keir Starmer's Labour and the European governments is he has done this deal with Donald Trump. There's also been a very strong statement in favour of the UK economy from the chip makers NVIDIA, saying it's a great place to do business. There's this landing strip about growth comes and the naysayers all go away on the recess. And George, just because Laura and I want to be the people who keep saying that events, dear George, events, is there a way out of the stramash for Labour?
Yes, of course there is. Look, I think some of the gloom has been overdone in the sense that yes, it's had a difficult, bad first year, but there is sort of scope for recovery. And I think if Keir Starmer can learn from the mistakes of the first year and act on them, then of course there's scope to recover. The big consolation they have is the weakness of the Tories, because although Reform are now their main opponent, they're weak in Parliament. So I think that helps them. They have got this big majority. They are already working to forge better relations with MPs. Keir Starmer spending more time in the tea rooms and so on. But I think a lot does hinge on the economy, and that in turn hinges on sort of global events. Some extent things out of their control. We all like to imagine that politicians are in complete control and can make good or bad decisions. But you look back, ever since the sort of the post-crash era, no one's really managed to get the British economy back to the growth levels we saw before that. So I think that is in some ways a sort of defining question, isn't it? Is will the good times ever return, or are we just in this new fraught era where there's just less money to go around?
Very, very big questions. George, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for taking us through some of the lie of the Labour land. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Laura.
So with thanks to George for keeping us in the clear on the politics, we now turn to a story which has upset so many of us. The newscasters have been paying close attention to the Air India crash. And there's been the preliminary report released. It's only 15 pages, but it's really shocked the world.
It is a huge international story. People remember the crash was on the 12th of June. what we know so far, and this is not the full picture, but this is what we know. The Boeing Dreamliner was on its way to Gatwick, departing from the western Indian city of Ahmedabad, and it crashed into a densely populated area just after takeoff. 260 people were killed. 53 of them were British nationals, 169 Indian nationals, 7 Portuguese nationals, and 1 Canadian, as well as 19 people on the ground. And people will remember that one person, a Brit, remarkably survived the crash, which was an extraordinary thread in such a distressing story that somebody made it out alive.
Yes, I mean, that was a miracle, but it was a miracle in an absolute tragedy. And the world wants to know why this crash happened. And the preliminary report has made use of an exchange in the cockpit via the voice recording, which raises questions about the cutoff of the fuel supply to the engines. And it's clear, I think, to those who are following this as experts, we do not have in the public domain everything that investigators are looking at. We have a portion that they're prepared to release now to sort of end speculation and to sort of, where possible, restore confidence to the industry and to passengers all over the world. But I'm afraid to have to say that there is now in question about the pilot's behavior related to the fuel cutoff switches to the engines. And, they're going to have to analyze in further detail which of the voices belongs to which of the late pilots, because it's not clear in the preliminary report that they know who asked the question, why did you do the cutoff, to which the reply was, I did not. So I'm afraid to say it's a chilling report. It does end one line of inquiry, but it raises another. And that's where the news has taken us to, with more to come.
That's right, there will be more to come unquestionably, but what the report does say clearly is that the fuel switches, which turn the engines on and off, were cut off shortly after takeoff. They were then turned back on, but the engines failed to regain thrust, and no significant other faults have been found with the plane or its engines so far. Now, Air India, who is the operator of the plane, said in a statement it stands in solidarity with those affected. They've acknowledged the report and says it will continue to work with the relevant authorities. This is, though, what the Indian Civil Aviation Minister said.
I don't think we should jump into any conclusions on this. I truly believe we have the most wonderful workforce in terms of pilots and the crew in the whole world. I have to appreciate all the efforts the pilots and the crew in this country are putting into the aviation. They are the backbone of this civil aviation. They are the primary resource of civil aviation, and we care for the welfare and the well-being of our pilots also. So let's not jump to any conclusions at this stage. Let us wait for the final report. Justice has to be done. So I know it is a very difficult time for the family members, but from our side, whatever best we can do from the ministry, we are trying to assist in that.
So the message there, we have a report. There is some new extra information in the public domain, but it may well not be the full story, and the Indian government there urging people not to jump to conclusions. So, Paddy, what are you doing tomorrow? Or what are you going to do while you're in Sheffield?
Yes, so I've spoken to the community gardener who looks after all the fabulous window boxes here about what he's going to have to do differently with the hosepipe ban. And his name's Tim. We've just had a drink in the garden. He's going to follow the rules. He's going to comply. He's going to have to use a watering can. And they're going to investigate if they can use the River Don, which is adjacent to the garden. It's a riverside pub. But all over Yorkshire, at least 5 million people are now dealing with the first hosepipe ban, with another to come in the southeast of England next week.
Very good.
And what have you got, talk about the TV, what have you got on Sunday morning?
Well, TV will be such a force tomorrow morning on BBC at 9 o'clock.
Force, not fast.
We actually are, well, I'm excited to say tomorrow we've got somebody for the first time on the programme, actually, who is very important, if not a household name. Dame Melanie Dawes is the chief exec of Ofcom, and Ofcom isn't just an obscure regulator that looks after sort of phone masts and what the BBC and other broadcasters get up to. Ofcom now has the job, essentially, of making sure that we are all safe and protected from the worst things that you can find in the dark corners of the internet. And in a few weeks' time, they are taking on more powers specifically to stop kids and teenagers under 18s from seeing awful things online. And newscasters might remember, we've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years hearing the heartbreaking experiences of too many families whose lives have been turned upside down by things that have happened to their children on the internet. And we will be talking at some length tomorrow about whether or not the new rules on the way are really going to make enough of a difference. And it's one of these issues where you have politicians have sort of been grappling with this for years and years and years. But the real world, in this case, the real world online, has been zooming ahead at 100 miles an hour. And there is, you know, to borrow your phrase, there is a sort of philosophical question actually about whether or not governments in this era have, frankly, got any chance at all of being able to keep up with some of the changes that are happening in our society at such a speed. So we'll be talking to her tomorrow morning. Also, Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, will be with us talking about electric cars. So if you're into that kind of thing, that might be an interesting conversation. And the Doctor Who star, and Ncuti Gatwa, is with us as well to talk about his steamy new project. So more of that tomorrow.
Well, we're all steamy at the moment, whatever projects we're doing.
Are your glasses steaming up, love?
Yeah, they are actually. I think they have. So Joe Pike will be with us tomorrow. Henry's lying down in a darkened room. And so we look forward very much to reviewing all Sunday's journalism. But for now, thank you for listening and watching.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.